Hey garden friends, welcome back to another episode with Gardenscapes by Kay. In today's video, we are going to be tackling installing our living fence down below. So you've already seen the actual product of the living fence, but we're getting ready to do a lot of work down there. So I thought it'd be great to give you like a before it all came about video so you can understand as we go on this journey what we're working towards. We live in an area that's regulated by HOA. And in this part of our subdivision, our HOA requires us to have black steel fencing from aesthetic purposes. And while it is very, very pretty, you don't have to worry about the wood breaking down and all that good stuff, it does not lend itself to privacy. So fortunately, we do live backed up to a green space, so everything back there kind of helps us with privacy from our back neighbors, and they're about 50 yards away from us. But our neighbors on the side, they're right there. And granted, we have a wide yard. It's about 130 feet wide, but still, you know, if we're in our yard, if they're in their yard, we want to be in our yard and not, you know, have to censor ourselves or be any type of uncomfortable because our neighbors are enjoying the space that they pay for as well. So to remedy this problem, I thought back in February when we started this project that I would use fencing, a living fence, and landscape as a screen so that it would be an evergreen option, and I could be compliant with the HOA, stay in their good graces, but also get my goal, which is to be able to make full use of my backyard without the visual interruptions of what's going on in my neighbors' yards and without us interrupting whatever's going on in their yard. So today I'm going to show you how we installed this. This is part one of a very long process because we will be installing an evergreen screen around the entire perimeter of our yard. But I feel like in order for us to continue on this journey, since we're a brand new channel, that it's going to make sense to know where you came from, and that's going to be the point of today's video. So if you're into that type of thing, stick around for today's video. If you find at the end of the video that you just love your girl Kay and you love what we're doing out here in the yard, give this video a big thumbs up, share it with a friend, subscribe to the channel, hit that bell notification. We're brand new, so we're really working towards building up a community of other people that are absolutely infatuated with gardening, just like we are, especially down here in Texas Zone 8B, because we're going to have beautiful, lush landscaping despite our temperate climate. That's all I got to say about that. Elsewise, let's hop into today's video. All right, so let's start at the beginning. So this is our corner down below. You see the black fences. We are installing an evergreen fence in like this L shape of this corner. Originally, where you see my son scalping the grass, we were only going to install it in the corner, partly because I was afraid. I wanted to kind of test the shrubs and all that good stuff. But it quickly escalated because we were back there planting, and I was just like, you know what, forget it. Let's do all of it. If we're gonna do it, let's do it. Why not? So the first thing that I had my son do was scalp the grass. And then we laid out this water hose to try to put the shape of the bed in place. And like I said, initially we were only doing the corner. But after I kind of put the plants in place, I was like, this is not enough. Like, we're going to need some more. So it escalated quickly, and we ended up deciding to do the L shape, which I'm actually glad we did because the plants have been thriving. And while they've only been in the ground for a few months, I can see where over the course of the next couple of years, they're going to fill in nicely. So what you see us doing here is kind of planning out the space. The plants that I have for the corner are a Nellie Stevens holly, and then I had two copper top viburnums to plank that holly. And the reason why I have different plants is because I like texture. I don't like for everything to feel the same. And I felt like that was a very complementary texture to one another. The Nellie Stevens Holly is a really large plant. It gets really big. So at some point eventually, because it's in the shade, it's not going to do that for several years. But at some point eventually, it'll take up that whole little corner that we're standing in. And then the viburnum are kind of like the shoot off to the L shapes, if that makes sense. So I'm just talking to my son here, kind of walking him through what we're doing, teaching him at the same time. He's very interested in this type of stuff, and he really helps me a lot when it comes to these type of outdoor projects. So we were kind of just discussing the plan. So here we are. These are the plants that we got, and I'll be back when we start. Well, here we are. So one of the things that I would do differently, here you see us installing landscape fabric, which I'm not a huge, I don't like landscape fabric anymore. Like, I did it because I didn't know any better. This was our first time. But had I have been smarter, there are two things that I would have done. One, I would have went ahead and planted the shrubs first. And then two, I probably would have only put landscape fabric along the back line where the actual evergreen bushes are going in. And I would have used cardboard if I was going to do the no dig method for the front parts of the beds where I still want to plant. But in this case, we did landscape fabric all over. And this landscape fabric is like the industrial kind. We found it off of Amazon. We spent a pretty penny on this stuff, and it was really good reviews on it. And we did this while the grass was dormant, with hopes that we would smother out the grass before like growing season kicked in. And for the most part, it worked. We have very aggressive grass, though. We have this common Bermuda grass is what the builders put in. And it did show in some places, but I haven't had as much grass pressure in this bed, and I contribute that to a couple of things. One, I think it's timing. We dug this bed in February, so it was like when it was warm in February, but not warm enough for the grass to come alive. So I think this grass has had more time to kind of sit under the fabric and not get the light and air and stuff that it needs in order for it to grow. And then two, we have drip irrigation down in this bed. So I'm only watering in this bed in the specific areas where I want the plants to receive the water. So I have drip going to each one of the shrubs that we've installed. There's no drip on the front line of the bed yet, but we're going to install that probably as early as next week because we've made some changes since we've planted this. And there's a couple of plants in there, like our camellias need drip, our hydrangea that's in there needs drip. And then we need to run like a drip line to the front where the hostas and the grass is, and where the perennials are, the newly added perennials are going to be, so that we can automate the watering down to this bed. But for the most part, I would say if you're going to do a no dig method and you have similar grass like mine, that weedy grass that'll grow through anything, I would say do it when the grass is dormant. And then only put the landscape fabric in areas where you don't plan on digging again, because we've had to dig holes around this landscape fabric since we've done it, and it's a pain in the butt. I do not enjoy it. It's so much of a pain in the butt that I am willing to go through the heartache of this time next year, because I know the grass has died off underneath. I am willing to go through the heartache of pulling the mulch that I have in the bed back, taking the landscape fabric out, tilling the ground, and putting the mulch back in. That's how much I hate it. That's how much I hate it. But this was our first time. Again, I'm sharing this so you can learn from my mistakes. If I had to do it over, or when I do it again, because we have several more evergreen beds to install, I will only put the evergreen fabric where the actual shrubs are. Everything else, if I decide not to dig out the grass, I will be using like thick cardboard, not paper bags from Home Depot that you could put your grass and stuff in like we did in some other beds. I'll talk about that in later videos, but like thick cardboard to suffocate the grass. So what we're doing here is our whole lawn is on a drip irrigation. Well, not drip, but it has irrigation. So this particular line is a sprinkler system, is a sprinkler head that waters the corner of this yard. So I'm transitioning that sprinkler head from being a sprinkler head to being a connection line for our drip irrigation. And I actually run supply lines down the back of each one of these beds so that I can tap into it and put the water exactly where I want it to go. So I found this adjuster, this converter head at Lowe's. I'll link it down below. It's been really helpful. I've used it several times in our yard, and I don't have to worry about water pressure or anything like that. I connect the hoses to these 2 black pieces, clamp it in, and it has done its job. And I just use specific couplers on the end to regulate how much water each one of the plants gets. So we really worked hard on this project. I mean, we were up late with lights out because we were determined to get these shrubs in. So what you see is now is kind of planning out where everything is going to go and making sure that we have everything in place. So after we laid the landscape fabric down, we went around the entire edge of the perimeter with this no-dig border. I think this no-dig border is good for kind of defining the edge, but I will say that I did go back later and trench around the border of the grass. That's how you kind of see our rocks around the border of the bed, because I like the look of that better. And this no-dig border is only 2 inches high, and our grass has, I don't know what you call them, but it can jump like the border. I know that's not the proper term, but it can grow over the border with rhizomes. Is it rhizomes or talons? I don't know. It's whatever goes on top of the ground. So our grass was shooting like little grass stems on top of the border and digging down into the mulch to grow. And I was like, oh no, we can't do this. So while it's good for creating that defined border, in my scenario, I went around and still trenched out. And that has been a lifesaver as far as keeping grass out of the borders of our beds. So we bordered this entire perimeter of the bed. We didn't do the back, which we're going to have to go back. I found these metal borders that you can put along. I think they're like 6 inches tall that will keep like grass from like the green belt and our neighbor's yard out. We will go along the back because we bordered the back with this no dig edging, but it doesn't keep the grass out. So I'm going to go back with a taller border. It's metal and it's black to line the fence line to keep our grass and our yard separate from our neighbors and the green belt, and that will help us eliminate like weeds coming in from the back. So we did all of this, and we did this for probably 2 days, and then once we got the edging installed, we actually started digging the holes for the actual plants. So I'll let you watch us kind of get everything installed here, and then I'll be back when we start digging our holes.
And I really wanna know if I will ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high.
All right, so now that the edging is all installed, it's time to start digging our holes. Now, our dirt here in the Bernie area is more of a loomy, sandy type dirt. We've got this thick, nasty topsoil that the builders bring in when they are like laying the sod. And I guess it breaks down okay, but it's really hard to get through. It almost gives you like this clay consistency. So like on top you have this clay dirt, and then underneath it is where you get to the natural, really fast draining soil. But it's also rocky. So my husband and my son had to really come through to help get this dirt out of here because we were fighting against both of those instances. We've dug sod out of another bed the bed that's right underneath the one you saw me last week working in. And it's great, but that's a lot of work. And I just don't know that I'm up for that type of work. And I don't want to have to regrade the yard I had to bring in like a lot of dirt to backfill, which cost us money. So it's cheaper for us to follow this method. Just again, I would say dig your holes first, then lay your landscape fabric so you don't have to cut into it, because also cutting into it gives that grass an opportunity to get to sunlight that will then help the grass grow. So you don't want to do that. So we took quite a bit of time digging all of these holes. So in the evergreen fence, you'll see a mix of 3 plants. We already talked about the Nellie Stevens holly. We talked about the copper top viburnum, but I also planted 2 of the southern wax myrtles because I really like the light texture that I get from them. They're really flowy. They get really bushy. They can tolerate shade conditions and they can tolerate full sun, and they grow really well and they grow fast. Everything back here is supposed to be fast growing plants, like our Nellie Stevens. You know, with hollies, the first year they kind of focus on putting down their roots. And I've learned that from the hollies that we have planted in the front. The second year they start to grow on, and then the third year they will really just kind of take off. And I think that's true for most plants. But these right here, I've seen a tremendous amount of growth even in the first year. So I was really excited to add those to the fence because, again, it's got this light, really slender leaf structure that I thought would be a very pretty complement to the more weighted leaf structure of the viburnum. And I was right. It's really, really pretty. And I love the way the wind blows through it. It has like this really natural, this really light and airy texture to it. It's really pretty. I'll insert some footage when we do like a little walk around now that it's all installed, or it's partly installed. We still got a lot to work to do back here. I'll give you a close-up of what that looks like. Again, planting these holes or digging these holes beforehand also helps you keep dirt off the landscape fabric. Because honestly, guys, we just created an environment for weeds to grow. We had to backfill with compost and soil and stuff like that. So we ended up just creating a nice little area, a nice little flower bed, a little sandwich of dirt, landscape fabric, and more good dirt underneath for weeds and stuff to grow, which was a total waste of time. So all we did was we cut the holes where we needed the hole for the plant to be. We dug the holes, and then once all the holes were dug, we planted the plants. And we did that a number of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 times to get the actual living fence installed.
Days and nights won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know if I will ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high. Even if the sky is falling down.
If this boy don't stop playing with worms, I think that's why he liked digging the holes, because he likes to play with the worms that come out of the grass. Like, it's crazy. But anyway, this child is looking for earthworms. I don't know why, but I do know why. He's a boy. That's why. But we did this for quite some time. By the time it was all said and done, I was a hot, sweaty mess. I was tired, but I was very pleased with where we had gotten. So let's take a quick look at where we ended up as far as installing the fence. I'll give you like a high up shot of what it looks like from my office, and then we'll come back and chat.
Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding.
So once we got it all installed, this is what it looks like from up above in my office. Everything was nicely mulched. It was planted really neat. This was a rainy day. It stayed like this for all of like 2 seconds, and then we started dealing with oak leaves dropping down into the bed. So it doesn't look like this anymore, but that's okay because we've got perennials to plant, and we will get it looking back like that pretty soon, and we're going to document it and share that process with you.
Even if the sky is falling down, even if the sky is falling.
All right, so now that part one of the living fence is done, and we've had it for a few months, had some time to live with it and really get comfortable with what we're doing out here, I feel like we're ready to go ahead and tackle the rest of the yard. I do love the shrubs that I've chosen, even with the landscaping fabric faux pas. You know, we're gonna let it grow in. What my goal is now is to find some perennials. It's late in the planting season, so I am going to order what I want. And even if it wasn't late, it's really hard for us to find stuff down here locally that I see that I really like. I think a part of it is our climate is so extra that I don't know if people really get into like their landscape like that. At least I don't see it a lot in our neighborhood. We kind of stick with what's safe. And I really want to push the limits a little bit. Like the living fence will kind of be what's safe, what I know will be able to stand the tried and true heat and the couple of weeks of cold that we get when we do decide to get cold, and our drought conditions. But from a perennial standpoint, I really want to push the limits and find stuff for my zone that is not so common around these areas, that really adds some color and adds some interest to the garden. So I'm in the process of finding some of those and ordering those online. I'm gonna plant them. It's in the shade garden, so they should have a little bit of protection against the sun, maybe not the heat, because we are pushing like heat indexes of 103 and 105, but I think it'll be fine. I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna test it, so you don't have to. But I have become the queen of planting stuff at inopportune times during the season. What I'm learning is that if I do plant it, that I have to take extra care in making sure that it survives the transplant, whether that be from a pot or a location. I've got some root activating stuff that I use. I found it at Home Depot. I'll leave it linked down in the comments. And that's really been helpful because I planted this at the most, like when we planted it, it froze the next day and nothing died. We didn't lose anything, and everything's been thriving since. So I say all of that to say we're happy with where we are, we're comfortable with what we've done, and we're comfortable tackling the rest of the yard once the heat starts to dissipate just a little bit. So that may not be until like around September where we start to plant the rest of the living fence. But in the meantime, between time, we'll keep, you know, doing small stuff in the yard, particularly down in the down below area because it's shady down there and we can handle kind of being outdoors even if it is a little hot. So I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you got some ideas. I hope it inspired you to tackle some of your own landscaping projects in your yard, and I can't wait till we come back for our next video. Bye for now, friend.